Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating theory from one author that kind of bridges the gap between physics and spirituality, and it proposes a pretty radical new way to look at reality itself. So what if everything we think we know about reality is just the tip of the iceberg? The author we're looking at today asks us to consider a reality that runs on a completely different set of rules, one where consciousness, not matter, is the real star of the show. All right, so here's the game plan for today. We'll kick things off by comparing two very different takes on physics. Then we'll look at where the author thinks modern science is already pointing towards a deeper truth. We'll unpack his whole theory of a perfect physics, check out the evidence he puts forward, and finally, we'll explore what it all might mean for us. All right, let's jump right in. To really get a handle on this, we're going to put two super different views of reality side by side. So, on one hand, you've got the physics we all learned in school, right? It's all about matter, energy, space, and time. But then you've got the author's idea of what he calls perfect physics, and this is a whole different ballgame. Here, reality runs on consciousness and something called resonance. Our physical world is seen as just a denser, maybe even illusory version of reality, and the ultimate driving force isn't something like gravity, but consciousness itself, flowing from a central source. Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. The author doesn't just pull these ideas out of thin air. He actually points to some of the weirdest, most cutting-edge parts of modern science to build his case. Take quantum entanglement, for example. I mean, this is a real thing, but it is seriously bizarre. You've got two tiny particles that become linked, and whatever happens to one instantly affects the other. And I mean instantly, no matter how far apart they are, even if they're on opposite sides of the universe. So for the author, this isn't just some weird science fact. It's a huge clue. He's basically saying, hey, maybe this whole idea of space and distance being a barrier, maybe it's just an illusion. He thinks the real connection between things is all about resonance, not where they are physically. And then there's this mind bender. Scientists right now admit that something like 95% of our entire universe is made of dark matter and dark energy. Basically, stuff we know is there, but can't see, can't touch, and can't measure directly. It's a huge cosmic mystery. So, according to the author, this vast, invisible universe isn't empty at all. He suggests that this is where most of reality is actually happening, in these other dimensions that are just beyond what our five senses can pick up. Okay, so let's see how all these pieces fit together into the author's bigger picture, what he calls perfect physics. You know, when you lay it all out, the core ideas are surprisingly straightforward. It all starts from a single central source that sends out life energy, which is basically consciousness. As that energy expands, it kind of slows down, creating denser worlds like ours. So in this model, consciousness isn't just a byproduct of the brain. It's the actual force that creates everything. And resonance, well, that's how it all stays connected. He pictures this whole setup as 7 levels, and he says the number 7 is mostly symbolic, so don't get too hung up on it. Our world, Earth, is down at level 1. It's the most dense, the most, well, illusionary in a sense. The spirit world he talks about are on higher, lighter levels, like 3 and 5. But here's the crazy part. They're not up there somewhere. They're all right here, superimposed on top of each other, just vibrating at a different frequency, totally outside of our normal concept of time and space. Okay, so this is probably the question you're asking right now. Where in the world is he getting all this information? Well, he says it's not just a philosophical idea. He points directly to his work in a field called Instrumental Transcommunication, or ITC for short. An ITC is pretty much what it sounds like. It's the idea of using modern tech, phones, radios, computers, you name it, to try and open up a line of communication with what the author believes are beings in other dimensions. And his main piece of evidence is, well, it's a pretty wild personal story. He claims that back in 1996, he got 2 phone calls from a colleague, another researcher named Konstantin Raudiv. The only catch? Raudiv had died 22 years earlier. And this is where it all comes full circle. Because according to a message the author says he got from Raudiv over the radio, there's a key requirement for this to work. And that quote you see on screen says it all. It only works when everyone's vibrations are in complete harmony and their intentions are pure. See? It all comes back to that core idea of resonance. All right, let's bring this home. If we just go with this framework for a minute, what does the author say all of this means for us? For our lives and how we think about death? Well, according to the info the author presents, death isn't the end. Not even close. He describes it more like waking up on level 3 in a paradise world called Eden, a place completely free from all the conflict and struggle that we're so used to here. But that's not the final destination. The author says that after spending some time there, we're presented with a choice that's guided by a kind of soul plan that we apparently map out before we're born, but forget about once we're here. He says most of us actually choose to come back to Earth for another go-around, to keep learning and growing. But some might decide to move on, to ascend to even higher, more refined levels of existence. And that really leaves us with one last big idea to chew on. Whether you buy into this whole framework or not, just exploring it forces you to ask a pretty profound question. What if consciousness is the main creative force in the universe? Not matter, but thought and awareness. How would that completely change how we see the cosmos and our own place in it?